You so much, everyone, for joining us today. We are going to go ahead and be recording this session for those folks that aren't able to attend today. Just so as a friendly reminder, please do not give us your PID or any personal questions. If you do have any questions, we can discuss them afterwards. Thank you.
Let me first start by welcoming you all. We're really happy to have you here for the workshop on the Bachelor and Master's program in International Affairs. This is a program that I've been connected with since its very beginning. I wrote the curriculum for it. And so it's a program that I feel great attachment to. But before we get started, I want my colleagues here, Matthew, Lynn, and Stephanie Garibo all day to introduce themselves and tell you about them, and then I will tell you about myself as well. Matthew, you want to start?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for attending. My name is Matthew Lin. I'm one of the academic advisors for the International Studies program. So I handle a lot of the undergrad side of the BA MIAs.
Stephanie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Garibaldi, and I am one of the GPS program advisors here at GPS.
So I'm Nancy Gilson. I'm the director of academic degree programs at both GPS and for the International Studies program. I've been in this position for a very long time, since 2010, and was, here more or less on the ground up with the ISP BA MIA, and then worked with one of my colleagues on the GPS faculty to create the BA MPP with political science, and then the BA MPP with economics, and then of course the BA MIA with the political science department. I think this is a great program. I think it's a really good opportunity for undergraduates. And so it gives me great pleasure to sort of introduce you to the curriculum and to talk with you, have the opportunity to talk with you about what's so good about it anyway for you. And so let us start and talk about this. Matthew is going to take care of things in the chat. If you have questions that you want to put in the chat, he can answer some questions, big questions, important questions that he thinks should be answered. He'll throw out to all of us. So by all means, if questions come up, throw them in the chat, and in one way or another, we will answer them. So what's the BA MIA program? It's obviously a joint program that connects your undergraduate degree in political science to the graduate degree in the Masters of International Affairs program at GPS. But the question really is, what is it sort of substantively? And here I think, the best answer to that is that GPS is an interdisciplinary place. Its origins are in political science, economics, and international management. And so the curriculum in political science is a really good training, thinking about how institutions work, how decisions are made, what are the politics around regulation and law. If you think about trying to get a budget passed or trying to pass major legislation that comes out of the executive, and then combine that with economic questions or questions about business. Should we protect industries? Should we have open trade? These are all questions which are very much in the wheelhouse of political science, but which the Masters of International Affairs, I think, gives you even a greater set of tools to think about and assess policy and work in the policy arena or work in private industry where policy has a consequence for business. So it's really a program that's designed for students who want advanced training. And I'm not going to read these slides because you all got into UCSD because you're smart and you can read. So I'm going to let you read the slides on your own. But I think that if you are interested, well, let me put it differently. It's a program that doesn't direct you in one particular way. If you go to law school, you're going to get a law degree and you're going to become a lawyer. If you go to business school, you're going to get a business degree and you're going to go likely into business. If you get an MIA, you're really opening up the world in lots of ways in terms of employment. And so it's training in policy making, in international affairs, in business, in international management, in development in NGOs, for example. We have students who leave GPS with a master's degree and run for office, go to work in the public sector, in the private sector. And so, and a master's degree really is, in many ways, the degree you need to get a job at a level and with a salary that most of you believe you should have access to, having gotten an undergraduate degree at a big institution. But the master's degree is sort of the new bachelor's degree, in the sense that it's now the degree people with you will be competing in the labor market with people who have master's degrees. In order to level that playing field, you need a master's degree. So the degrees that you earn in the program is a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and International Affairs at the end of your senior year. Then you matriculate to one additional year of graduate work, and then get your Master's of International Affairs. So it's the same curriculum as the 2-year master's, but you just have one additional year instead of 2 additional years. So this is sort of a schematic that gives you some idea about, I think students thinking about the program for the first time are not always clear on how one does it. This gives you some idea. If you come in as a freshman, you apply in your junior year, which is typically your 3rd year. You start graduate coursework in your senior year, your 4th year. You graduate with your bachelor's degree, and then you do one additional year of graduate work. If you come in as a transfer student, and about half of our students in the BA MIA program are transfer students, you come in, you apply either in your 1st or 2nd year. About half of the transfer students actually have to apply in their 2nd year, so they have 3 years as an undergraduate, and then you do an additional year. The reason for that is a lot of transfer students don't come in with all of the lower division requirements required for the major, and so it takes that extra time. But you can apply in your 1st year if you have enough coursework at the upper division level, or your 2nd year if you need time to get lower division work, and then have the extra year of graduate work. So as I said, this is really an interdisciplinary program that combines work in political science, and so politics and policy making, international regulation, domestic, bilateral, multilateral organizations, economics, development. We have, a lot of coursework across a range of things. And the assumption is on the part of the faculty that they have to be able to do a little bit of everything. Our management faculty can talk about economics. Our political science faculty can talk about business. If you want to talk about trade, you have to be able to do all 3. And it's a place that has very deep expertise in Asia and the Americas, and increasingly in South Asia. With the creation at the end of last year of the new India Center on campus that's housed here at GPS, we will have an increasing number of classes on South Asia, and so making sort of a bigger, sort of a bigger toolbox, if you will. And so it's really a school that allows you then to focus on a number of things: population growth, trade, business climate, climate change. We do a lot on climate change and energy security, sort of both traditional guns and bombs, as well as more complex non-state actors in security issues, health policy. And so it's really intended to be a curriculum that doesn't keep you narrow, and allows you to see the way in which there's an interaction among, sort of among the issues or questions in which you're interested. So the program is open to all political science majors. So it doesn't matter whether you've already declared a track within political science, you can still apply to the program. But once you apply and are admitted, you're admitted to the track in international affairs, which is not a standard political science department track and has a different set of requirements than any of the tracks within the Department of Political Science. So at some point, if you're really interested in the program, the political science department has a description of the requirements on their website, as does GPS. But we're also happy to meet with you and provide you with a course, a requirements checklist, and go through so you can really have the opportunity to see what you're getting into in terms of there being more requirements. It also requires that admits show a third quarter proficiency in a GPS language by the end of your senior year. So the GPS MIA degree requires sixth quarter proficiency. So by the end of the graduate year. So it's not 6 quarters strictly, it's sixth quarter proficiency. Some of you probably are taking language. Some of you may have native ability. Some of you may have AP scores that get you through at least 3 quarters. That's what we're looking for, so that we can admit you knowing that you can manage the 6th quarter proficiency of language by the end of your master's year. GPS has a regional requirement, which we'll talk about in a minute. So the language that you qualify with at the end of your senior year must align with your regional or country focus at GPS. So if the language that you qualify, if the language that you know isn't an Asia Pacific language, then we have to talk about alignment and taking another language. But if you have, the host of languages that are spoken in the Asia Pacific, in Asia in general, Southeast Asia, or in Latin America, Spanish and Portuguese, then you're in good shape. So this is basic eligibility at the time of your application. You have to be a declared political science major. Someone who's thinking about declaring, if they get admitted, doesn't work. You have to actually be a political science major at the time you apply. At the time of application, you have to have a 3.0 or higher as a cumulative GPA and a 3.4 in your upper division major coursework. The difference between the two is we know that some of you didn't come in as political science majors, you came in as neuroscience majors or bio majors or math majors, or there's just a learning curve at UCSD. And so we look hard at your upper division grades as much as we look at your cumulative GPA. Those are hard requirements that to GPAs. Again, you have to at the time of the application, you have to be able to demonstrate that you can complete nearly all of your upper division coursework by the time you start graduate coursework in your senior year. You don't have to have it all finished by the time you apply or by the end of your application year, but I have to be able to look at it and see that you don't have 7 political science classes left, plus do the 8 core classes that are required in the graduate year. I have to make sure that you can finish your senior year without killing yourself with too many classes, and that you can finish well with good grades, right? Again, you have to be able to show that you're working toward proficiency in language. And then some students may be required to attend summer prep courses in micro and quantitative methods between their application year and the year that they start taking graduate coursework. If you don't have any math in your background, in particular any calculus, if you have no economics, then we may require you to do prep. Prep is a non-graded program, but the idea is to kind of get you some idea of what the curriculum is going to be. Of the, 150 people admitted to the 2-year program, about 80% of them are required to do prep. So this is not, you're not being punished. It's really something that most people who apply to the program do. And I've never heard anyone say that summer prep wasn't worth it. They complained about it when it was required. They were glad they had it when they got here in the fall. Matthew? So this is the overview, and we're going to look more specifically at the courses, but this just gives you a sort of overview of the lower division and upper division requirements, so that you can see, what the mix is. This obviously does not include your GEs for your college, or if you're a double major or have a handful of minors, right? This is just for the major itself. And we're going to talk about these, but let me just say something about the GPS requirements. So the only courses that you'll be taking as an undergraduate is the first year core sequence. There are 8 of those. You have to take them. You have to take them in the order in which they're scheduled. And they do build on one another. The rest of it, the regional specialization, completion of language, your career track, your capstone, are all done in the year after you graduate with your bachelor's degree. So they're all done in your graduate year. So this is the lower division political science requirements. So if you've started your lower division requirements, you can see that these are different than the ones that are allowed for the standard track in political science. We've added the data analytics Poly 5, and the reason is because GPS is analysis and methods heavy, and so we want you to begin to kind of build that toolkit earlier. And we require that you do work in the lower division requirements in comparative politics and international politics, because that's the sweet spot of the political science at GPS. All of the political science faculty at GPS are either comparativists or they do IR. Even the political scientists that we have that do American are comparativists in that they look at the US in comparison, unusual for a political scientist. The US is rarely done in comparison. We do that at GPS. And so they compare the US to Asia, they compare the US to Europe, right? So we require those lower division classes. And then the Poly 30, that teaches you some research methods. And then this is the upper division sequence. And so you'll see at the first 2, the coursework is quite set. You have to have 2 classes in international political economy. Again, GPS is interdisciplinary between political science and economics and management. And so understanding the way in which politics affects economic policy, the way that business has a consequence in politics, this becomes very important. And American institutions, so the 100 level classes in the department. We don't do a lot of work specifically or narrowly on American political institutions, but these are the classes where you learn how institutions work. Like, how does a constitution shape the institutions and the politics? The United States is kind of a mess right now, precisely because the Constitution defines party rules in such a way that we don't have an alternative to the major parties. The the Constitution, has designed the institutional process, the regulatory process in that fashion. That's true in Europe. That's true all over the world, right? Constitutions matter. And then you have to have 2 classes, either from international relations or comparative politics, and then 3 electives from the upper division political science curriculum. So those of you who have taken, the immigration class or classes on human rights or classes on California politics can use those as elective courses. And you can find the list of classes that are allowed for international relations or for comparative politics on the departmental website. These are lists which are determined by the department, not by GPS. So if you need, sort of better understanding of what those are, or if you want to talk about the possibility of petitioning a class, that petition would go to the political science department. I'm happy to help force the issue if I think it's a reasonable request, but in the end, those are decisions that are made in political science. So this is the GPS first year core, and this is, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. A little bit of microeconomics. Globalization, many of you have probably taken classes. If you've taken classes with Lawrence Brose or Simeon Nichter, you've done some pieces of globalization. Quantitative Methods 1 is a statistics class. Quantitative Methods 2, which you take in the winter, is a coding class. You learn R and research design using R and Excel. Accounting and finance, because you have to understand finance if you're really going to talk about the international economic system. And policymaking processes is our class on why constitutions matter. It's a class that we've had for a very long time. It's very much a GPS class. And then in the spring, you have international economics and international politics and security. The international politics and security class is a little bit broader than one you've probably taken it in political science, because it looks at things in addition. It looks at the way, in addition to sort of standard security issues, it also looks at the way that social media, polling affects decision-making and policy design. And so it's really much more in that policy making. Instead of just analyzing conflict, it's also in the realm of policy making and security. And so this gives you an idea of what the GPS language requirement is. You will have to choose a country or region. They're listed here on the left of the screen. This is a very short list of the languages that we allow. In Southeast Asia, we also allow people to use languages like Hindi or Tamil, increasingly Spanish, because there is some Spanish in the Philippines. So it's we can talk about this requirement, but so your third quarter proficiency for the end of your bachelor's degree needs to be a language that's connected to one of these countries or regions. Okay. So let me stop for a minute. Matthew, are there questions that I should be speaking to?
No, the few that they have kind of been answered throughout the PowerPoint.
Through the chat? Okay.
Yeah.
Hang on, because we'll give you an opportunity at the end to sort of ask your questions directly as well. So
we have a question right now. Is this program still available to declare double majors with one PSI?
Yeah, we have a lot of double majors. My advice, if you're a double major, is that we sit down sooner rather than later to plan that out. Just so that you don't get yourself at some point into a situation where you have a lot of classes to take, or if you're a double major in a department like Viz, where classes are not offered regularly or on a regular schedule, or only once during an academic year, and we have to figure out what that quarter is. So if you're a double major, you're absolutely welcome. We've got a handful of them. I just like to sit down with them early on to figure out how to do that. Is that it, Matt?
Let's see. We also have if they're a graduating senior, can they still apply?
If you're a graduating senior, you can still apply. We have to do some work with your college to get the quarter hold lifted so that you can continue. But the colleges in general allow seniors to apply so that you have another year of undergraduate eligibility. This is a special carve out, if you will, that the colleges allow for students in the joint programs that GPS has.
And then we also have, is the Middle East an option for a regional specialization?
It is not GPS. We do in some of the classes, particularly in some of the security classes, we talk about the Middle East. In some of the classes on trade, and in particular, for example, things like oil trade, between and the Belt and Road Initiative in China. The Middle East is clearly a central player in that, but we do not have the Middle East as a regional specialization.
Okay, that's all the questions for now.
Okay. Let me just answer the one that just came up, is whether it's likely that more regional specializations will be added. I expect there to be a regional specialization added in South Asia. We now have several faculty who are going to be teaching classes on India and the sort of Indo-Pacific, as they call it. So South Asia broadly. I expect that will be added. My guess is in another year. So potentially by the time you would all be here. Do I expect that the Middle East or Africa or Europe is going to be added? I don't. The school really does focus on everything on either side of the Pacific Ocean. Okay. So this plan here in front of you that shows you what it's like if you were admitted as a freshman. The idea here is just to show you that if that it is doable, right? This has the classes on it that you would need to take. It shows you where you take them. It shows you where you apply. And so it is doable to do the program. And it's even doable to do the program if you're not going to apply this year, for example, if you want to go abroad. Let's say you're a sophomore and you plan to apply next year. You could go abroad this year. You could go abroad next year. You could do UCDC. Once you're in the program, once you start your senior year and start the core, you can't go abroad until you do let's say, international internship between your senior year and your year of graduate work, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it is possible to be an undergraduate and take advantage of things on campus. Next one. And so this is what it looks like if you come in as a transfer student and you're able to step right into upper division classes. Again, we know that for some transfer students, this is hard. But it looks something like this. We do have transfer students apply in their first year, and what they end up doing is taking more classes than are listed on here. They end up going to summer session. So it is doable. Again, if you're a transfer student, my advice is that you make an appointment with me, and we sit down and work out a plan to see how it looks. Again, about half of our students who come into the program are transfer students. And so it is doable, but like being a double major, it just takes planning to do it. Okay. So once you're in the graduate year, so you've done the core classes, you've graduated with your bachelor's degree, you've done a summer internship, you're now matriculated to graduate standing, you have to choose a career track. And these are the options of a career track. A career track is 5 courses, 2 that are required and 3 electives. It's a relatively long choice, lists of electives from which you choose. And you really do have the opportunity to kind of craft the way that you go through the career track, so that you, so that you get exactly the expertise that you're interested in. So international development and nonprofit management, international economics, environmental governance, international management, international politics. There's a fairly even balance among these 5 in the program. Some of them have more math and economics than others. So a lot of it is really figuring out, like, what's your intellectual interest? What are your skill strengths, and what do you want to be when you get out of the program, and making a decision based on those things. And then you have to have a regional requirement. Again, done for most students in their graduate year. And these are the countries and regions. Obviously, 2 of them are regions and 3 of them are countries. The regional requirement is 2 classes, typically an economics of, for example, Southeast Asia, and a politics of Southeast Asia. The courses sometimes have slightly different names, but that's basically the way that they're structured. Some students do 2 regions. So if you come in with a language and you want to take a second language, or you come in with, let's say you have Chinese, you could do China and Southeast Asia. So some students really do choose to do both. If you do 2 regions, you have to have 2 languages which are directly connected to that region. But it is doable. We have a lot of students who do that. And then we have these certificate programs. These are sort of in-house certificates, if you will. They give you the ability to put on your resume that you've taken enough courses to be considered to be highly proficient in these areas. And so we have a quant certificate, which is basically taking a series of methods classes, so that if a potential employer asks you about having a good method skills, you could say, yes, I earned the quant certificate. The spatial analysis certificate is in GIS and remote sensing. If you're interested in climate or environmental issues or social policy, spatial analysis is very good. So for example, if you want to create a map that shows the relationship between the placement of glass recycling plants and poor health outcomes and class and race, you'd create a GIS map that would allow you to plot these things and show the relationship among these things. And so that becomes very important then in thinking about social issues like healthcare or health inequities or recycling and climate issues, right? And then the energy analytics certificate, we have a deep faculty that looks at decarbonization, nuclear power, changes in technology. We even have one class in the energy sequence that's jointly taught with Jacobs School of Engineering. And so that's really a certificate that allows you to go out either to the public sector or the private sector and say that you know something about developing technologies in the energy sector. their design, what's sort of in the future, what are the costs of it, what are the economics of changing to new technologies, and so on. And the advantage of these certificates is that it's the one thing that GPS does that allows you to double count classes. So there are courses for the quant certificate that are also required for a career track. In that instance, for example, you can double count those. So it allows you to get that. It allows you to get that thing that you can hang onto your resume, the Christmas tree of your resume, that doesn't in fact require a lot of extra coursework. So this is a little bit about the application. We'll do an application workshop in winter quarter and really sort of get deeper into the requirements. And so I'm not going to go over to this in great detail. We will send out a copy of, of the slides so that you have them, and post the workshop so that you can review it again. That'll give you this information. But this gives you some idea about the application deadline and what's required for the application. It is both a simpler application than the one that you use to apply to UCSD. But the one piece of it that's different and perhaps a little bit more difficult is the statement of purpose, because this is really one about what your intellectual interests are and why you're interested in international affairs and what you want to be when you grow up with your international affairs degree. And so it's a slightly different kind of essay than you had to write when you applied to undergraduate school. There's also a supplemental essay that allows you to explain something, a gap in attendance, the F that you got in organic chemistry, things that you think need to be explained, that we'll see. And I think it's always good to explain those things rather than to let them just sort of hang on your application. But that's not, the supplemental essays are not required. Okay, but as I say, we will have a workshop in winter quarter and a separate workshop on the statement of purpose. So upon admission, so you've applied. This slide tells you, what at the time you apply, what I'm going to be looking for. I recommend that you meet with us and talk about your application and talk about where your coursework is. But these are the courses and the requirements that I'm going to be looking at, because they tell me both that you're ready to do graduate work, that you're ready to take on 8 courses that you otherwise hadn't planned on doing. But also it tells me, for example, if you've made a lot of progress in your upper division major requirements, that you can in fact graduate with your bachelor's degree on time. Again, the last thing I want to do is admit someone to the program who then discovers that they have so many classes left for political science that they can't do it in the year to which they've committed for the program, and then the GPA requirements. Okay, so they're fairly straightforward. Okay, and so on your personal statement, we're going to be looking again, sort of that you have an interest, that you can say something about your interest in international affairs. What coursework have you done? Have you studied abroad? What internship work have you done? Look, we know you're undergraduates, so you're not going to write an essay that says that you spent a year at the State Department working on policy on the Ukraine, or that you were in the White House for a year while they were trying to decide what to do about, right-leaning elections in Central America. We know that we have expectations that are designed around your being undergraduates, right? But we do want to know why you're interested in international affairs so that we know that you're in the right program. So this is a question you should be asking. You should be asking about, this is one of the ones that you should be asking us, and that is about financial aid and whether you have access to financial aid and what other kinds of assistance that you have once you are in your graduate year. So as undergraduates, you have the same access to all the financial aid that you have now. So if you are on a Cal grant or a Pell grant or have other kinds of fellowships, a chancellor's fellow, all of that is good through your senior year. They don't carry into your graduate study. So there you have to apply to graduate financial aid, but there is graduate financial aid. The other thing to tell you is that students who do well in the core, which is to say the courses that you have to take your senior year, are very likely to be invited to TA at GPS. And if you've got a good record in political science, perhaps in political science, and that has a big offset toward the cost of tuition and fees. And we have a lot of students who end up doing research and becoming formal graduate research assistants to faculty. So there are ways of funding that's that additional year in graduate school. And then the second question you should be asking us is, what am I going to do with this degree when I get out? Applying to any graduate program, you should be pressing them on where their students get jobs. We have students who go into all kinds of jobs. This is just a short list, and there's a couple of other slides, but let me tell you that what job you get depends a lot on what you're interested in. We don't narrow your search, you narrow your search. And then we have a very good careers team that sits down with you and figures out exactly what you're interested in and exactly what the fit is between you and what you're interested. We also have a very extensive alumni network. They hire into their own companies. They help facilitate hiring into companies for which they work. They've got expertise in how to look for jobs abroad as well as in the United States. And so this is a real advantage to students at GPS. Next. So this just gives you some idea of the class of 2022. And this is data from February of 2023. So 85% of the class of 2022 were fully employed by the February after they graduated. And that means employed in a field that they wanted when they graduated. 4% went on to further study. In some cases, those were PhD programs. In some cases, those were other master's programs. We had people leave here and decide that they wanted a degree in data science, or they went on to get a degree in public administration, or they went to get a language degree. Others, 7% postponed their job search. Some of these are people who just decided that they wanted to travel for a year, or they had family reasons. Some went into the military. Some were already, had ROTC obligations. And so 4% as of February were still looking for jobs. And this gives you some idea of sectors, right? 4% in the US public sector, 13% in the nonprofit, non-governmental organization sector. This is everything from the sort of big south-facing NGOs like USAID to things like, the Red Cross or crisis management or local nonprofits that settle immigrants and migrants, and then 65% in the private sector, from everything from technology to finance and the financial industries. We have students who go into marketing. I had a BA MIA a while ago get a job in one of the biggest beverage producers that's located in Brazil, and his job is opening up 2 new markets a year. And so he travels 8 or 9 months a year, opening up markets for this big beverage company. So it's really, again, you narrow your search. We don't narrow your search. Next. So career services is really, it's a full service career program, if you will. They have a summer career development program prior to the start of your senior year, and they really focus on doing career coaching and workshops in sectors that you're interested in. They help you develop professional resumes. They do mock interviews. They bring in alumni to do mock interviews. They do what are called their spring connections and their fall connections, which is that they bring, during the academic year, bring alumni in to meet with people in the program. They do outreach trips to employers. And then they do internship and professional development. So in between your senior year and your graduate year, you will be required to do an internship. These are often paid internships, but career services also helps facilitate those internships. So they pay for travel and they pay for housing. They help pay for housing. We've had internships in Spain, at the Pacific Command in Hawaii. That's a tough assignment. We've had people spend time in Asia, in China, in Tokyo, in Korea, in India. We had a student who was particularly interested in being at the UN, so spent a year with the UN, spent a summer at the UN in the West Bank. We've had students who went to Africa and worked on development projects there. So again, this is really up to you. Career Services helps you find that internship and helps fund it. So you should be on, I don't need to tell you guys this, you're all connected on social media, but you should be on the GPS Instagram, which is GPS_UCSD, on GPS Student Affairs, which is GPS_Student Affairs, GPS Careers, Facebook. Does anybody use Facebook anymore? See, I'm hipper than I look. LinkedIn, which is being hit hard, by the way, as the tech sector. I heard yesterday that they were going to be firing a bunch of people. So maybe I don't know how good LinkedIn is anymore. But definitely Instagram. We post all kinds of stuff there, programming, student jobs that are coming up, career opportunities on the GPS and Student Affairs Instagram. And so it's a good way of seeing what's going on in the school.